So if somebody offered you a chance to sit in as a replacement performer with the greatest band of all time, would you take it, or would you say no thank you, it could ruin my future career? Today we're going to be looking at the curious case of, a lot of people say is the seventh Beatle, after Pete Best and Billy Preston, or the eighth after George Martin, Jimmy Nicol. Now, James George Nicol is an English drummer and business entrepreneur. He's best known for temporarily replacing Ringo Starr and the Beatles for a series of concerts during the height of Beatlemania in 1964, elevating him from relative obscurity to worldwide fame and then back again in a space of 2 weeks. Nicol had hoped that his association with the Beatles would greatly enhance his career, but instead found that the spotlight moved away from him once Starr returned to the group. And in 1965, his subsequent lack of commercial success culminated in bankruptcy. In 1967, after having worked with a number of different bands, which included a successful relationship with the Spotnicks, he left the music business to pursue a variety of entrepreneurial ventures. Over the decades, Nicol increasingly shied away from media attention, preferring not to discuss his connection to the Beatles, nor seeking financial gain from it. He has a son, of course, Howard, who was a BAFTA award-winning sound engineer, very prestigious in his own right. Now, Jimmy Nicol's career began in 1957 when he was talent spotted by Larry Parnes while drumming with various bands in London's The Two Eyes Coffee Bar, a time that saw Britain's Skittle-dominated music scene give way to rock and roll, which was become popularized for his Teddy Boy youth. Parnes invited Nicol to join Colin Hicks and the Cabin Boys, whom Parnes co-managed with John Kennedy. Now, Colin Hicks is the younger brother of English entertainer Tommy Steele, whom Parnes also managed. After taking a temporary break from the group to be a member of the original pit band in the Lionel Bart musical Things Ain't What They Used to Be, at the Theatre Royal Stratford East, Nicol rejoined Hicks' band for an appearance in the 1958 Italian film documentary Europa di Notte, breaking them into Italy and subsequently allowing them to tour there extensively. During the early 1960s, he went on to play with a number of artists, including Vince Eager, Oscar Rabin, Cyril Stapleton, and was kept in regular work through Charlie Katz, a well-known session fixer during that period. Nicol has cited drummer Phil Seaman and saxophonist Julian Cannibal Adderley as being his main influences. Now in 1964, Nicol helped to form the Shub Dubs with former Merseybeat bassist Bob Garner, a jazz lineup similar in music style to Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames, a group to whom Nicol had sat in when they were the resident house band at London's now defunct Flamingo Jazz Club. Other members of the Shub Dubs were Tony Allen, Johnny Harris, Quincy Davis, and Roger Coulomb, who went on to form Blue Mink. It was at this point he received a telephone call from the Beatles producer, George Martin. Nicol recalled, "I was having a bit of a lie down after lunch when the phone rang." Now, when Ringo Starr became ill with tonsillitis and was hospitalized on June 3, 1964, which was the eve of the Beatles' 1964 Australasian tour, tour band manager Brian Epstein and the producer George Martin urgently discussed the feasibility of using a stand-in drummer rather than canceling that part of the tour. Martin suggested Jimmy Nicol, as he had recently used him on a recording session with Tommy Quickly. Nicol had also drummed on a top 6 budget label album as part of an uncredited session band, as well as an extended play single with 3 tracks on each side of Beatles cover versions, marketed as Teenager's Choice and titled Beatlemania, which meant that he already knew the songs and their arrangements. Producer Bill Wellings and Shub Dubs trumpeter Johnny Harris, who was freelancing as an arranger-composer, were responsible for putting together alternate budget cover versions of songs taken from the BHP, or British Hit Parade, aimed at cash-strapped teenagers. Harris said, "The idea was for me to try and guess which songs would be topping the charts about a month ahead. I would do the arrangements and go in the studio and record sound-alikes." The first EP, Extended Play, release got to number 30 in the charts. Jimmy was on drums, and as you can imagine, we covered a lot of Beatles songs. Although Lennon and McCartney quickly accepted the idea of using an understudy, George Harrison, who was very close to Ringo, threatened to pull out of the tour, telling Epstein and Martin, "If Ringo's not going, then neither am I. You can find 2 replacements." Martin recalled he nearly didn't do the Australia tour. "George is a very loyal person. It took all of Brian's and my persuasion to tell George that if he didn't do it, he was letting everybody down." Now, the great Tony Barrow, who was the Beatles press officer at the time, later commented, Brian saw it as a lesser of two evils. Cancel the tour and upset thousands of fans, and continue and upset three people, the Beatles. Ringo stated that was very strange, then going off without me. They'd taken Jimmy Nicol, and I thought they didn't love me anymore. All that stuff went through my head. The arrangements were made very quickly from a telephone call to Nicol at his home in West London, inviting him to attend an audition rehearsal at Abbey Road, to packing his bags all on the same day. At a press conference, a reporter mischievously asked John Lennon why Pete Best, who had been the Beatles' previous drummer for 2 years, but dismissed by the group on the eve of stardom, was not given the opportunity of replacing Ringo, to which Lennon replied he got his own group, Pete Best and the All-Stars, and it might have looked as we were taking him back, which is not good for him. Now, Nicol's first concert with the Beatles took place just 27 hours later, on June 4th, at the KP Hall in Copenhagen. He was given the distinctive Beatle mop-top hairstyle, put on Ringo's suit, and went on stage to an audience of 4,500 Beatles fans. McCartney recalled he was sitting up in the rostrum, just eyeing up all the women. We'd start She Loves You, counting in 1, 2, nothing, 1, 2, and still nothing. Their set was reduced from 11 songs to 10, dropping Ringo's vocal spot of I Want to Be Your Man. McCartney teasingly sent Starr a telegram saying, hurry up and get well, Ringo. Jimmy is wearing out all your suits. Commenting later on the fickle nature of his brief celebrity, Nicol reflected, the day before I was a Beatle, girls weren't interested in me at all. The day after, with a suit and a Beatle cut, riding in the back of the limo with John and Paul, they were dying to get a touch of me. It was very strange and quite scary. He was also able to shed some light on how he passed the time between shows. I thought he could drink and lay women with the best of them until I caught up with these guys. Now, in Holland, Nicol and Lennon allegedly spent a whole night at a brothel. Lennon said, it was some kind of scene on the road. Satricon. There's photographs of me groveling about, crawling about Amsterdam on my knees, coming out of whorehouses, and people saying, good morning, John. The police escorted me to these places because they never wanted a big scandal. When we hit down, we hit it. We were not passing about. We had the women, they were great. We didn't call them groupies. Then I've forgotten what we called them. Something like slags. By then the Beatles were becoming more restricted by their increasing fame and spending most of their free time inside hotel suites. But Nicol discovered that, aside from acting as a Beatle, he could behave much as any tourist could. I often went out alone, hardly anyone recognized me, and I was able to wander around. Now in Hong Kong, I went to see the thousands of people who live on little boats in the harbor. I saw the refugees in Kowloon, and I visited a nightclub. I like to see life. A Beatle could never really do that. Now, Nicol played a total of 8 shows until Starr rejoined the group in Melbourne on June 14th. He was unable to say goodbye to the Beatles as they were still asleep when he left, but he did not want to disturb them. Now, at the Melbourne airport, Epstein presented him with a check for £500 and a gold Tourmatic wristwatch inscribed from the Beatles and Brian Epstein to Jimmy, with appreciation and gratitude. George Martin later paid tribute to Nicol, whilst recognizing the problems he experienced in trying to readjust to a normal life again. Jimmy was a very good drummer who came along and learned Ringo's parts very well. He did the job excellently and faded obscurely immediately afterwards. Paul McCartney acknowledged it wasn't an easy thing for Jimmy to stand in for Ringo and have all that fame thrust upon him. And the minute his tenure was over, he wasn't famous anymore. Nicol himself expressed his delusionment several years later. Standing in for Ringo was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Until then, I was quite happy earning 30 or 40 pounds a week. After the headlines died, it began dying too. He resisted the temptation to sell his story, stating in a rare 1987 interview, after the money ran low, I thought of cashing in some way or another, but the timing wasn't right, and I didn't want to step on the Beatles' toes. They had been damn good to me and for me. Now, Nicol reformed the Shub Dubs, renamed himself Jimmy Nicol and the Shub Dubs. They released 2 singles, Husky, Don't Come Back, followed by Humpty Dumpty, Night Train, neither of which was a commercial success. He was later called upon to again stand in for the ailing drummer when Dave Clark of the Dave Clark Five fell ill, and Nicol's band, Jimmy Nicol and the Shub Dubs, filled in for the Dave Clark Five in Blackpool, Lancashire. Whilst there, Nicol was reminded of just how popular, albeit briefly, he had been as a standing Beatle, receiving a bundle of 5,000 fan letters passed on to him from an Australian radio disc jockey. Nicol sent a message back thanking the fans, promising that he would one day return to Australia permanently. He was later reunited with the Beatles when his band appeared on the same bill as them and the foremost on July 12, 1964 at the Hippodrome in Brighton. In 1965, of course, he declared bankruptcy with debts of £4,066, 9 months after being a temporary Beatle. Later that year, he joined the successful Swedish group the Spotniks, recording with them and twice touring the world. He left them in 1967, spending time in Mexico studying samba and bossa nova rhythms, whilst also diversifying into business. In 1975, he returned to England and became involved with housing renovations. In 1988, it was rumored heavily that Nicol had died the year after making his final interview, and 4 years after an 1984 appearance at a Beatles convention in Amsterdam. But an article in 2005 by the Daily Mail claimed that he was still alive and living in London, refusing to do any interviews or talk about his tenure with the Beatles. It was later asserted by the same source that he had moved to Mexico in 2013 with his then wife, and was still living there as of 2017, despite family and friends having no contact with him. Now, during Nicol's brief time with the Beatles, both Lennon and McCartney would often ask him how he felt he was coping, to which his reply would usually be, "It's getting better." 3 years later, McCartney was walking his dog Martha with Hunter Davies, the Beatles' official biographer, when The Sun came out. McCartney remarked that the weather was getting better and began to laugh, remembering Nicol. The event inspired the song Getting Better, Getting Better All the Time, on 1967's Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. McCartney again makes reference to Nicol on the Let It Be tapes from 1969, saying, "I think you'll find we're not going abroad because Ringo just said he doesn't want to go abroad. You know, he put his foot down, although Jimmy Nicol might go abroad." While appearing on the radio show Fresh Air, hosted by Terry Gross in April 2016, Tom Hanks noted that at least partly influenced by Nicol's experience with the Beatles when he wrote the script for his 1996 feature film, That Thing You Do. Now, discography and performance history. 1950s, he was a choir boy at Honeywell Road School in Wadsworth. He was on the Boys Brigade and percussion, Army Cadet Military Band, percussion and xylophone, and for a short time he also worked as a drum repair for UK musical instrument distributor Boozy and Hawkes. In 1957-1958, he was part of Colin Hicks and the Cabin Boys. Now, Colin Hicks is the younger brother of British rock and roll star Tommy Steele. They released 3 singles. 1959-1960, Vince Eager and the Quiet Three. In 1960, the Oscar Rabin Band. 1961, Cyril Stapleton Big Band. 61-63, session work, including jobs with musicians from the orchestras of Ted Heath and Johnny Dankworth. The Shub Dubs 3 singles, Humpty Dumpty, Husky, and Baby Please Don't Go. In 1964, 64, he also toured in April and May with Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames, and the Beatles concerts, of course. June 4th, KB Holland, Copenhagen. June 5th, Translong, Hillegom, the Netherlands, recording TV show Vara. 6th of June, the Auction Hall, Villenhall, Bloker, the Netherlands. June 9th, the Princess Theatre in Kowloon, Hong Kong. June 12th, the Centennial Hall in Adelaide. And June 13th, the Centennial Hall again in Adelaide. 64-65, touring as Jimmy Nicol and the Shub Dubs. And solo single release as The Sound of Jimmy, called Sweet Clementine and Roaring Blue, with the Spotniks. They released 1 single in their 65-67 tenure, Husky and Drum Ditty. 67, he lived in Mexico working with samba and bossa nova groups. He married and had a son, Howard, and in the 1990s won an award for his work as a sound engineer on a BBC collection of Beatles recordings. 69, on the Jimmy Nicol Show, he did Jumping Jack Flash, Ezra Psychedelica Della Gogo on the Discos Overon label and sung in Spanish. 71, he was part of the Blue Rain song for the Mexican rock group recording in Nicol's house. So a very interesting career. But Jimmy Nicol, I heard him play for the Beatles, and again, a very good session player, there's no doubt. But the idea, I saw some interviews, and just to see how John and Paul treated him. He treated him with great respect because John and Paul were closet drummers, as a lot of people know. Paul a little bit better than John. But Ringo wasn't there. You can't replace Ringo Starr. No one can. So, I mean, you get a call sometimes, and my dad mentioned this. He said, always answer the phone, because you never know when the next big job is going to happen. And as a journalist, usually good phone calls come in the afternoon, because it's way past deadline. If you get them too early, that's bad news, because I used to get calls 5 o'clock in the morning about police tape. That's all I want to say. So that's the story of the great number 7 Beatle, or number 6, depending how you look, left to right, Jimmy Nicol. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, or subscribe. Have a good day. Bye.